Hi guys, and welcome back to Eddie's Coaching. Today we're going to run through a little bit of an exercise about the power of positive thinking. So before we even get started on this video, let's pause and go grab a pen and paper, because you're going to need to write some things down on this little exercise I've created so that you can really think objectively and have it rock solid in front of you exactly what's happening in your life about the thinking that's around you with both your friends and yourself. And then we're also going to look at how that affects you and what you can do to implement some changes. So pause the video now, go grab a pen and paper, and I'll see you in a minute. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to write down the 5 most important people in your life. These will be the 5 people you spend the most of your time with. And I also want you to write next to each person the main things that they tell you, the main ideas. Are they positive things, or are they complaining? Are they whining? Or are they putting you down? Are they people that, might be giving you a hard time? Or conversely, are they super positive? Are they always trying to encourage you and make your dreams and your hopes and your work easier? So write those 5 people down and write down those specifics about each one, and then we'll come back to the next stage of the exercise. Welcome back. So the next thing you're going to have to do is you're going to have to decide is, if I'm a summary of these 5 people and their thoughts and beliefs are coming onto me and making me think in a certain way, is that a good thing or not? Are they overwhelmingly a positive influence in your life? Or have they enforced a little bit of a change in your mentality? Have they made you less positive than you would otherwise be? Now that you've done this, you'll be able to decide if that is actually based on the reality that we're living in. Now there's a few things I've written down here, and these are items that we now have in our lives that are way more abundant than they have ever been in history. So the point of this exercise is to compare what we as a group of people are thinking about how we're living and the abilities and environment that we're living in compared to the reality. So let's go through a couple. We often don't appreciate some of the things that we now live with. We're living in an abundant physical environment with a roof over our head, a soft bed. You only have to go camping and not have a nice bed for a week and then just miss that bed you're coming back to so much to realize how much we take that for granted every day. We have the best healthcare that we've probably ever had in history. I remember I went to Versailles recently, and we were hearing about an operation that one of the kings had to have. And these days, that would just be a minor nothing operation. I won't go into the details because it's a bit gruesome. But in those days, even for the most wealthy and affluent person in the world at the time, this was a major disaster. So, our health is as good as it has ever been. And it's something that we should really appreciate. We're surrounded by possessions. Just the idea of having a cup that you could carry around with you, for people living 100 years ago, that was just not something that they had they were just not a technology they had access to. They might have had porcelain mugs that you couldn't carry water around with you. I mean, we buy bottles and chuck them away, which would have been something that would have been valuable back in the day. We also have access to information like there has never been before. This video is just one example of me giving you guys ideas through the internet, where before you might have had to read a book, and even to get that book you would have had to go to a library. Before printing, education was not even something that was readily available in any sense. Just to get a copy of the Bible would cost you thousands and thousands of dollars, because you would have to have someone transcribing every page, taking day after day, making everything was perfect. These days we can make information like that, transfer it anywhere in the world. I mean, how valuable is that to our lives? Another thing that we've got is this massive communication ability. I mean, we can pick up the phone and talk to someone on the other side of the earth at a whim, and it's virtually cost-free these days if you've got a smartphone and Skype. I've got a brother that lives in Pittsburgh and I'm in Australia. We are literally on the opposite sides of the world, and yet I can just pick up the phone and text him in 2 seconds and I've sent him a message. I mean, that is massive power that we've never had before. So we're now free of location more than we've ever been. And our medical access is just become massive. Our standard of living and lifestyles have meant that we're now living to almost to 100 on average. If you take out young deaths, we're really living into our 80s and 90s. Now, 100 years ago, our average age was probably in the 30s. So, we've got massive advantages now than we've ever had before. So what does this all mean? Well, if you look at your list, and I'm sure you've taken down some careful notes, you'll probably find that most people in your life are not as positive about their life, and they're not living in this mentality of absolute excess that we've just explained here. Now, why is that? Well, it's because we all have a reticular activation system in our brains, and this is just a small part of our brain that says, okay, we've got this huge amount of information coming in, but I'm going to filter out anything that's not important. So if you're living in constant excess, and then that's just not an important thing for your brain to look at. What it's going to do is it's going to pick up the negatives, because they're things that you're going to have to deal with, or at least that your brain thinks that you have to deal with. Now, if you can bypass that reticular activation and switch it over so that it's only thinking about positive things, then you're going to bring in way more abundance into your life. So let me put it this way. Have you ever bought a car and then you've never really thought about seeing this car around, but then suddenly you're seeing that car everywhere? I bought a Jeep about a year and a half ago, and as soon as I got in a Jeep, I was seeing Jeeps everywhere. There's Jeeps on the road here, Jeeps on the road there, Jeeps everywhere. And why is that? It's because it's been highlighted and it's bypassing that reticular activation. If you change your mindset to one of abundance mentality, then you're going to be seeing abundance all around you. And why is that important? Well, that comes to the second part of this talk. And in the second part of this talk, we're going to talk about what happens when you change your mentality. Now, the first thing, as I've just explained, is your reticular activation system starts to filter out the negatives and starts to bring in the positives. But the second thing is you start to attract the right health, financial relationships and ambitions into your life. So if you're thinking constantly about how you're fat, then that's not really going to help you, because all you're thinking is, I'm fat, it's negative, it's bad. But if you're thinking about, oh, let's be healthy, then that's going to change things you do. You're going to start eating healthy. You're going to start exercising more. And it's the same with your finances. If you're thinking, oh, I'm poor all the time, I'm poor, I've got to save my money, I've got to be careful with how I spend, I've got to do this, then you're not going to be thinking about the future, which is, I'm going to be wealthy, I've got to seek out new opportunities, and I've got to bring those things back in and help me. And when you start seeking them out, it's no different to the Jeep I was talking about earlier. You will start to see those opportunities, and then you can pick and choose which ones you take, which gives you a feeling of abundance. Having a positive mentality is going to make the human struggle easier. Now, everybody goes through the human struggle. In fact, of philosophers all through the ages, from Buddha to Aristotle to Plato, they all talked about life as being a long struggle. Now, life is a struggle. Life is hard, okay? Sometimes you're going to have a divorce. Sometimes you're going to have children die. You're going to have your grandparents die. And in fact, death and the death of parents, friends, family is an inevitability in life. But are we going to make that inevitability and other inevitable negatives that happen in life the sole focus of our lives? Are we going to let them change the person that we are every time something bad happens? Do we look at them as roadblocks in life, or do we look at them as detours that we need to get around? Now, the more positive you are in your thinking, the more you can reframe these things. And that's what I'm getting at, guys, reframing. Now, what reframing is about is it's about taking any adversity that comes into your life and reframing it with a positive mindset. Now, guys, divorce is the perfect example of this. Two people. On one hand, you have a person that has a divorce and looks at it as the end of their life. Nothing could be worse. Oh my God, I've lost my soulmate. I've lost my partner for life. My life is over. And on the other hand, you have someone who just reframes it and looks at it like, clearly they weren't the right person for me, or they were the right person for that period of time, but now I'm free to start a new life, go in a new and better direction, find someone better or do something better with my life. Now, they're both in the exact same situation, but it's how they've reframed that experience that's going to make the difference to how they move forward, how much more creative and abundant they can be in their future that they're moving towards. So, in summary, guys, changing your mentality and the way that you reframe disastrous things that happen in your life and the way that you frame the positive abundance that we live in, these are really going to change the way that you move forward and help you create your dreams in the future. Thanks for having a listen. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'd love to hear your comments below on any adversities you might have had or any roadblocks that you've gone, no, I'm going to move past those and I've created a new life for myself.